Welcome to a journey into the heart of horror, where the lines between reality and madness blur. I'm Cyrus Cade, a freelance investigative reporter, and I'm about to take you on a chilling adventure to Jamaica's infamous Rose Hall Plantation. Here, the legend of Annie Palmer, the White Witch, has haunted locals for centuries. Join me as we delve into the dark history of this cursed place, where terror and mystery await around every corner. Prepare to face the shadows that have captivated the imagination of many and discover the truth behind Rose Hall's sinister legacy. As a freelance investigative reporter based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I've always had a knack for sniffing out the unusual and the unexplained. My name is Cyrus Cade, and I've made a career out of delving into the darker corners of human experience. So, when I stumbled upon the legend of the White Witch, Annie Palmer, and the Rose Hall Plantation in Jamaica, I knew I had to dig deeper. The story of Annie Palmer, a woman rumored to have practiced voodoo and been responsible for numerous deaths on the plantation, was both captivating and chilling. I couldn't resist the allure of this dark history, and before I knew it, I was booking a flight to Jamaica to explore the truth behind the legend. As I stepped off the plane in Montego Bay, the warm Caribbean air enveloped me, a stark contrast to the cold Minnesota winter I'd left behind. The vibrant colors and lively rhythms of Jamaica were a welcome change, but I wasn't here to soak up the sun or enjoy the local culture. I was on a mission to uncover the secrets of Rose Hall. My first stop was the local library, where I hoped to find some historical records or accounts of Annie Palmer's life. The librarian, a friendly woman named Mrs. Jenkins, greeted me with a warm smile and led me to a section filled with dusty old books and manuscripts. As I began to sift through the materials, I noticed a peculiar atmosphere in the library. It was as if the air was thick with an unspoken fear, a feeling that seemed to cling to every page I turned. "Mrs. Jenkins," I asked, "do you know anything about the legend of Annie Palmer?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room before she leaned in closer. "Be careful, Mr. Cade. The people around here don't like to talk about Annie Palmer. They say she's still out there, watching and waiting." I smiled, thinking it was just local superstition, but Mrs. Jenkins's serious expression made me pause. "What do you mean?" I pressed. "Strange things happen when you start asking questions about Rose Hall," she whispered. "People get nervous, and some even claim to see things, hear things. It's as if the past is still very much alive." I thanked Mrs. Jenkins for her warning, but I wasn't one to believe in ghost stories or curses. I was a journalist, after all, and I needed facts. So I continued my research, determined to separate truth from legend. The next day, I made my way to Rose Hall Plantation, now a museum and tourist attraction. The sprawling estate was breathtaking, with its grand architecture and lush gardens. But as I walked through the halls, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the wooden floorboards, every rustle of the wind through the trees, seemed to carry a sinister intent. I met with the museum curator, a man named Dr. Thompson, who was eager to share the history of the plantation. He told me about Annie Palmer's life, how she had married into the wealthy Palmer family and become the mistress of Rose Hall. But it was her alleged involvement in voodoo and her cruel treatment of the slaves that had earned her the nickname White Witch. As Dr. Thompson spoke, I noticed a peculiar look in his eyes, a mixture of fear and fascination. It was as if he was drawn to the darkness of Annie Palmer's story, yet terrified of its implications. "Dr. Thompson?" I asked. "Do you believe in the legend of Annie Palmer?" He hesitated, glancing around nervously before responding in a hushed tone. "I believe that there are forces beyond our understanding at work here. Forces that can drive people to madness and terror." I left Rose Hall with more questions than answers. The atmosphere of the plantation had been unsettling, but I still wasn't convinced that there was anything supernatural at play. I decided to talk to some of the locals, hoping to gather more information about the strange occurrences surrounding Annie Palmer's legend. As I walked through the nearby town, I noticed that people were reluctant to discuss Rose Hall or Annie Palmer. They would whisper among themselves, casting nervous glances over their shoulders as if they feared being overheard. It was as if the very mention of her name could summon some malevolent force. One evening, I stopped at a local bar, hoping to strike up a conversation with some of the patrons. The bartender, a gruff but friendly man named Joe, seemed willing to talk. "Joe, what do you know about Annie Palmer?" I asked, ordering a drink. He leaned in close, his voice barely above a whisper. "She was a wicked woman, Mr. Cade. They say she still haunts Rose Hall, seeking revenge on anyone who dares to enter her domain." I smiled, thinking it was just another tall tale, but Joe's expression was dead serious. "I've seen things myself," he continued. "Doors opening and closing on their own, strange noises in the night. Some folks even claim to have seen her ghostly figure wandering the halls of Rose Hall." As I listened to Joe's stories, I began to feel a creeping sense of unease. It wasn't just the tales themselves, it was the way people spoke about them, with a mix of fear and awe. They genuinely believed that Annie Palmer's spirit was still out there, watching and waiting. Over the next few days, I experienced strange occurrences myself. I would find my notes scattered across the floor, and sometimes I'd hear faint whispers in the night. At first, I attributed it to the wind or my imagination, but as the events continued, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. One night, I decided to sneak back into Rose Hall, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was causing these disturbances. As I approached the mansion, I felt an intense chill run down my spine. The air seemed to thicken, and every step I took felt like I was being pulled deeper into a nightmare. I entered the house, my flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump, and I couldn't help but feel that I was being herded toward some unknown fate. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper in my ear. "Leave now, while you still can." The voice was soft yet menacing, and it sent shivers down my spine. I spun around, but there was no one there. That was when I saw her. A figure in white, standing at the top of the stairs. For a moment, our eyes locked, and I felt a wave of terror wash over me. Then she vanished. I didn't wait to see if she would reappear. I ran out of Rose Hall, not stopping until I was back in my hotel room, gasping for breath. It was then that I realized I had been wrong to dismiss the legend of Annie Palmer. There was something sinister at work in Rose Hall, something that blurred the lines between reality and madness. The next morning, I packed my bags and left Jamaica, determined to never speak of the events that had transpired. But as I sat on the plane, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something behind, a part of myself, perhaps, or a piece of my sanity. When I returned to Minneapolis, I found it difficult to concentrate on my work. The memories of Rose Hall haunted me, and I began to question my own perception of reality. Had I truly seen Annie Palmer's ghost, or was it just my imagination playing tricks on me? As the days turned into weeks, I started to experience strange occurrences again. Doors would slam shut on their own, and I would hear whispers in the night. It was as if the darkness I had uncovered in Jamaica had followed me back to Minnesota. One evening, as I sat at my desk, I received a package in the mail. Inside, I found a small, antique locket with a note attached. The note read, "You should have listened." I opened the locket, and a chill ran down my spine. Inside, I found a photograph of myself standing in front of Rose Hall. But it wasn't just any photograph. It was taken on the night I had seen Annie Palmer's ghost. Suddenly, the room around me began to distort, and I felt myself being pulled back into the nightmare. I realized then that some mysteries are better left unsolved, and some legends are too terrifying to confront. As I looked at the photograph, I knew that I had become a part of Annie Palmer's dark legacy, forever trapped in the shadows of Rose Hall. And in that moment, I understood that sometimes the truth is more terrifying than fiction. Years have passed since my encounter with the White Witch of Rose Hall. I've tried to move on, to convince myself that it was all just a product of my imagination. But the memories linger, haunting me like a ghost. I've stopped investigating the paranormal, focusing instead on more mundane stories. Yet the allure of the unknown still beckons, tempting me to delve back into the shadows. Perhaps one day, I'll return to Rose Hall, determined to uncover the truth once and for all. But for now, I'm content to leave the darkness where it belongs, in the past, or so I tell myself. As I sit here writing these words, I can feel the presence of Annie Palmer looming over me, her eyes watching, waiting. And I know that no matter how hard I try, I'll never be able to escape the shadows of Rose Hall.
Thanks for joining us in the shadows tonight. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories every week. Have you got a story of your own? Share it in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And remember, the darkness holds many secrets. Are you brave enough to uncover them? Until next time, keep your lights on and your doors locked. Sweet nightmares.